Good afternoon and welcome to this special edition of the Federal Executive Forum celebrating 18 years of profiling IT mission programs in the federal government. This is our third annual Profiles and Excellence Chief Technology Officer program, which will be coming to you from the virtual studios of WTOP and the Federal News Network. I'm Luke McCormack, and during today's show, we will discuss emerging technologies and innovation at numerous government agencies and hear from key leaders making them happen. With me on this show are Dr. Lisa Costa, Chief Technology and Innovation Officer, U.S. Space Force; Ted Akata, Chief Technology Officer at FEMA; Frank Indiviglio, Chief Technology Officer at NOAA; David Koch, Director, DLA Research and Development; Nick Saki, Principal Technologist, U.S. Federal Pure Storage; and Greg Shern, Vice President, Tech Evangelism, Chief Technology Office, BMC Software. Dr. Costa, we're going to start with you. I think we're all excited about all the commercialization of space, and there's a lot of activity going on there, but there's also a lot of activity going on with nation states, et cetera. You must be incredibly busy over at the U.S. Space Force, and we are delighted to have you on the show. Can you give us a sort of a top line of what you're focusing on in regarding emerging technologies, innovation, et cetera, as you evaluate and implement those across the agency?
Well, Luke, it's great to be here, and thank you to Federal News Network for the opportunity to speak about Space Force and our mission. First, I would like to talk about the fact that the threats that we see in space environment. As the CSO indicated at this last Space Forum, we're not only seeing the kind of standard SATCOM and GPS jammers, but more destabilizing direct ascent, ASATs, on-orbit grapplers, the nesting dolls, directed energy weapons, and cyber attacks. So the threat space is a very active one. Our primary mission in the Office of the CTIO in Space Force is to employ science and technology and analysis and innovation to create dilemmas for our adversaries. So that's kind of a tall order. So how do we kind of, make sure that we're focused? And our focus is always on operations. And our strategy, which is one of enduring competition. So manage the escalation of any type of competition and work to mitigate or prevent moving toward any type of conflict. And that's what I mean by enduring competition. Some of the ways that we're doing that and the areas that we're getting after to accomplish that is helping codify requirements for operational test, training, and integration to make sure that our guardians are ready, right? That they're combat-ready forces and combat-credible forces. Another area is improving space domain awareness, right? Doing all of the data management, the integration of the data fabric in space and terrestrially, ensuring that those joint forces have the data that they need and the situational awareness that they need, and then supporting the JADC2 and enabling command and control, ensuring that the joint warfighter and the national security enterprise has the space information to incorporate space effects into our plans and operations.
A lot of complex things to think about and a lot of activity going on there. So we really appreciate sort of the overall fabric there and really applaud all the work that you all are doing over there. Well, Ted, we've been up in space. We're now going to come down to the ground here and talk about all the activity going on at FEMA and the things that the Chief Technology Office is doing there to ensure that FEMA is successful.
Yeah, hi, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. And just an honor, privilege to be here with you, Luke, and the team here. And I think Dr.
Likewise.
Costa, yeah, so Dr. Costa said a whole lot of technology. I wish I could just cut and paste and just insert here because so much of the technology underlying infrastructure are similar challenges to us. I think for FEMA, it is really simple. It's a people first organization. We help people before, during, and after disasters. It's quite simple. The mission is elegantly simple, but the complexity of carrying out is anything but. We have a very large area of operations. We recently had a typhoon hit Guam, a severe storm that knocked out power in many parts of Guam. You still have generator power, trying to keep critical facilities like hospitals going, and rapid repairs are occurring. And it's been, we've got a lot of challenges. We just came off, there is no downtime, it seems, with us and our mission partners. The ethos generally is to support locals and state governments and tribal and territorial governments. So we like to say, it is locally led, state managed, and federally supported. So there is a rich tradition that goes back to the fire service, right, with fire rescue. So we always highlight the fact that, your first responder is always your neighbor. That's something that, at the federal level, it's difficult to even comprehend what that looks like. And your local fire department, your local city government is who really leads emergency management. And we have a system of mutual aid in the U.S. Sometimes it's important to look at that. We have counties helping other counties. We have fire departments helping other fire departments. We have a very, very well-worn and historic approach to incident command and incident management. So I'll start there. Why? Because we've had some real significant challenges, right? You think about this atmospheric river that brought significant flooding to the West Coast, and our regions for quite some time prior to the significant weather late fall were already assisting our team in the Southeast because we had a significant hurricane. It was Hurricane Ian and Nicole. We had Fiona, and prior to that, it seems like we don't get a break within FEMA, and we're trying to strengthen the workforce and provide the kinds of support services because we are fundamentally people first and in everything we do. So we never got a let up, and of course now we have had significant. As you know, in the East Coast, we are now contending with this sort of smog that's been coming down from Canada, right? And it's been affecting air quality, and of course, that's a reminder that the West Coast has suffered really catastrophic wildfires, and with potential snowpack flooding in the mountain areas in the West Coast, it's likely to be a continuing significant water management flooding event. So it is complex, and we like to say this is a whole of government approach within the federal family. It's a whole of the federal government approach, as well as things affecting homeland security. We are part of DHS and the mission of DHS itself. And Luke, you know this because you were CIO at the department. It is quite complex. So before we get into any tech, just a little bit of a short thing on how complex the work really is. And I'm just grateful for all of our partners. And it is an honor to actually go before NOAA because, and Frank individually, because usually NOAA precedes us. They tell us where things are about to happen. So with that, back to you, Luke.
Thank you very much, Ted, and a great point there. And yes, all response is definitely local, but you have to deal with these things on a global perspective, which insert NOAA, right? You're up in the air, and I think a lot of people know that, and you're certainly down on the ground and below the ground. Frank, give us a top line of the activities that are going on across NOAA to keep this country safe.
Sure, and thanks, Luke, and everybody for having me. This is always a great opportunity. I'm glad to kind of talk about NOAA, but in context of the previous two speakers, I think it really fits in, and especially with our partners like FEMA, which we work closely with. I really appreciate the opportunity. So NOAA, from a top line, right, we have a big mission area, right, from the surface of the sun to the bottom of the ocean. There is a lot of science that goes on in that area. And it really spans, it spans a number of timescales, right? So you think of kind of the weather forecast, and that's a kind of a daily thing that happens every 6 hours, but really from severe weather, that's the minutes and seconds, all the way out to policy, which is more of a climate approach. And that could be, seasonal, decadal, and looking over centuries, right? We're looking at really long-term changes in the Earth system. So in there's a lot of science, and it spans, again, that big mission space. And there are a lot of exciting things that we do to keep that going, right? And that's from the field right over to HPC and out to the productization parts. So in the lens of kind of technology and emerging tech, I think the really exciting things that we do really enable the scientists in the field, right? So people, and I'm sure other agencies that have gone or have talked, and we'll talk later, do things out in the field. That's a hard thing. Like Ted mentioned fire weather, right? A lot of data needs to go to the people who are responding to fires. People have to, understand the weather patterns around fires. That's a lot of data collection. That's a lot of, up to the minute modeling. And there's a lot of advances that go into that. But a lot of the technology around that will, whether it be, how do I extend the meteorologist on the ground's ability to do their job? How do we get information back between agencies, between people responding, all the way out to, how do we prepare people? Like if you're in the New York or DC area, just like Ted mentioned, in the last couple of weeks, you've had to deal with, the fallout of fires somewhere else, right? In Canada and other places. And that happens in the West as well, right? So we've got a dose of things that have happened in other areas. How do you prepare people? How do you tell people that to be aware of these things? So it's kind of an exciting time in that, because a lot of the technology that's kind of readily available to us is now being applied, right? How do we can extend computing out to the field in a way that we haven't been able to before, and that takes things like cloud and networking, but it really extends the field personnel's ability to do their job, and things like machine learning and technologies around that area will provide a lot of additional capability, right? So how do we get better predictions? Well, if we can process data, as late as possible in the forecast chain, get that data in at the very last second, we get a better forecast, right? That means a better product for everybody. So a lot of that work that goes on really aids the forecaster, and you can see that from machine learning to things like uncrewed systems, where we can put uncrewed systems in places where you don't want to put people. So they extend the forecaster's ability to do their job and get better data from the environment. And again, that extends across that whole big mission space. So it's an interesting time, and it's an interesting thing to see all this stuff, all these technologies come together and really aid the forecaster and also aid our workforce, right? In the same way that we want to aid the forecaster scientists, we can use those same technologies to ensure that our workforce can be mobile. They can work from wherever they want to. They can keep things secure, right? So it spans not just the functionality, but also the business aspects of how we do our jobs, and making sure we have a secure environment, making sure that not only the data is safe and trustable for our customers and stakeholders, but also so that we can do our jobs in a really effective way.
Better data, better instrumentation equals better data equals better decision making. So we really do appreciate that. David, all this technology being deployed, all these activities, but we got to get the beans and the boots out there. Tell us about DLA and where do you fit into this ecosystem, and where does the research and development piece fit in?
Oh, absolutely. Hey, thank you. Look, first, I'd like to thank you just for inviting me to be part of this esteemed panel. What an honor, and what a great group of folks that are on here today. the Defense Logistics Agency has the mission, as you just alluded to, of providing that global logistics support to our warfighter. And we are so proud to do that mission, from food to fuel to clothing to pretty much 85% of all parts for any weapon system, whether it's an aircraft or a tank or a vehicle or a ship. We're providing that, not to mention 24 distribution centers around the globe providing that support. So certainly the mission is complex and really important. But Defense Logistics Agency is very proud of the robust research and development program that we have established, and we're pleased to share some of those emerging technologies with this esteemed group today. As the director, I'm focused on the following emerging technologies that are not only important to the public sector, but I think you would agree that many of them are important to the private sector as well. And we try to capitalize on the work that they've done. The things like communications and network technology, artificial intelligence and machine learning, as we've touched on a little bit this morning already. Additive and advanced manufacturing, and how do you get that to the warfighter at the point of need so they can make what they need if they're in harm's way. Supply chain risk management. It's important for our commercial industry. It's darn important for everything going on in defense. And of course, cybersecurity. So that's just a touch of some of the technologies that we're looking at in our R&D program. We do have 14 different programs spread across manufacturing technology areas and then also logistics research. And I think that's important because we really do that global supply chain mission, and the readiness of the service is of utmost importance to us. So I'm excited about talking about some of these topics as we move forward with today's discussion.
And we're excited to hear about them. So we really do appreciate that. Nick Saki at Pure Storage. Where does Pure Storage fit into all this and unlocking these capabilities for keeping this country safe?
Well, good morning, Luke. And I'm very pleased to be here today with this tremendous group of innovators. And Pure is very proud to support our government agencies in leveraging their data to deliver outcomes for the benefit of our nation. So at Pure, our core mission is to empower innovators to build a better world with data by enabling them to maximize organizational leverage over that data and the economics of data. And everybody has spoken to the topic of obtaining maximum advantage from their information to accomplish their organizational objectives, to reduce adversarial competition, et cetera. The challenge we've had, and you mentioned it, Luke, is instrumentation of the world has enabled us to know things at tremendous resolution and tremendously faster than we ever have before. So we have more data from which to make decisions, but translating that from data to information to intelligence to knowledge remains key in shortening the decision cycle for taking effective action. So what we focused on is how do we enable greater leverage over that data in order to help assist that decision-making criteria, but also how do we enable customers to leverage their data wherever, whenever, and however they want to? So that's driven us to create ever more capable, ever more scalable, ever more sustainable, and ever more secure systems for managing that data at institutional and wholesale scale. And that continues to be our focus now and for the foreseeable future. And one of the things we're reflecting on, because we have our annual customer conference ongoing now, is 10 years ago, we had 70 terabyte systems in 12 rack units. Now we're able to deliver 5 times that capacity in literally 1/4 that space. So now you've got systems that provide access to multiple petabytes of data in incredibly small footprints. But also we've increased the access time, throughput, capacity, latency, by orders of magnitude over where we were even 8 years ago when I retired from the Army. So that seems trivial, but you're not talking about storage of data. You're talking about leverage of data. And that is fundamental to delivering on improvements and capabilities in every aspect of our data-driven government. So we're very pleased to be the leader in that area and very pleased to be the choice of actually several of the agencies on this call in assisting them in accomplishing their mission, because at the end of the day, it's the outcomes that matter, not the technology.
Sure. And the storage important, accessibility is key. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We are talking with the Chief Technology Officers and Innovation Officers Roundtable, and boy, do we have a lot of interesting things that we're talking about. We were just wrapping up sort of the top line, state of the state across the community, and I want to bring Greg into this conversation from BMC's perspective. You are the tech evangelist. Evangelize, please.
Yeah, no, look, it's an awesome seat to be in because at BMC, we have a front seat view of all of the challenges, opportunities, and problems across the entire federal space, as well as the private sector. And so we can really see the common sets of problems that need to be solved with technology. And, one of the things that I see that's this common thread is every single organization is trying to become what I refer to as an autonomous digital enterprise. And there are certain capabilities that underlie this idea, and it's the capabilities of observability. Can I see what I have, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's assets, whether it's the data? The second really big capability is orchestration. Can I actually orchestrate all of these varied elements at scale? And the third really is resilience. Is it going to work when it needs to work? And, there's kind of this big layer underneath everything, and it's the massive amounts of data that we are all creating all of the time. And there's one big factor, one big innovation that can help us unlock every single one of these capabilities and all of that data. And it's actually AI. And artificial intelligence is a little bit misunderstood because all of our attention is going to one discipline, the large language models that are getting a lot of excitement. But, artificial intelligence has multiple disciplines, machine learning being one of them, large language models being another one of them. And applying these technologies at the right place, at the right time, for the right mission really is what brings together this idea of the autonomous digital enterprise. Can we actually see what we have, orchestrate it, and will it work when it needs to work? And I think everything that we're doing is focused on that core mission.
Very interesting concept, and I love the way you kind of outline that. Very important to understand that approach. Appreciate that. We're going to talk about a specific program. Frank, I'm going to start with you over at NOAA. Give us a top line on a program that you'd like to highlight that you're working on over there at the Chief Technology Office.
So I think, so I'm going to cheat a little bit and give you two, but I think that there's a lot of really exciting stuff that goes into the products and the forecasts that we do. And I think, when we talk about technology, going back to the thing I mentioned before about extending people's ability to do their job and, get more data, do more with more technology that's accessible. So in the area of high performance computing, things like cloud and kind of really pushing the software envelope are enabling not only the NOAA scientists, but also the community of scientists, right? So there's a program called EPIC with a NOAA, and they're using things like cloud to really engage with the community and get the best knowledge into the modeling and really move operational models forward. So those kinds of programs really not only engage our stakeholders, but they engage our scientists in general, but allowing that tech, the high performance platform, the software platforms to be accessible to more than just internal to NOAA, I think is really important. It really provides a good engagement platform. And kind of along with that, there are a number of other programs that support all these things, but things like there's in the CIO's office is a program called the NOAA Open Dissemination Project that allows everybody to interact with NOAA's data, to kind of engage as a citizen scientist or an interested party, and it's got other effects as well as drives parts of industry. Weather and climate data drives a lot of industry around us, whether we know it or not, from shipping to farming to whatever. So really, it's a way to kind of not just improve our science, but it's also to improve the ecosystem around that. And then the other side of that is and you know, and things you can see and things, how are we aiding people? You know, there really is, I think, a tangible, exciting benefits in things like uncrewed systems, right? As observation platforms, as improved sensors, but really as a way to collect data that either we couldn't before because it was, you know, it was a hazard to people, or extends that, you know, the brave people that go and fly into hurricanes and really they have the coolest jobs in NOAA. I'll just say it out loud. But you know, there are people out there that are getting observations that are doing really tremendous jobs at high risk, and things like ocean drones can take, you know, sea surface conditions from a hurricane, and you know, you can't do that with a person, right? So those kinds of platforms really will extend the forecaster's ability and the science's ability to really understand events, better prepare for them in the future, and really kind of put the best science forward to get everyone's
no question. And definitely some of the coolest jobs, certainly some of the most important, and some of the bravest individuals to take on that type of work. And good catch on the entire scientific community versus just the NOAA, which is comprehensive in its own right. Nick, Pure Storage, give us an example of where you all are doing some cool things with some of these agencies that you'd like to highlight here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, trying to pick an area is kind of hard, but let's focus on some things like server, you know, for virtualization and hybrid cloud.
Yeah, we'll try our best to pick one.
Analytics. So I will pick AI. AI continues to be something where, as was cited before, the leveraging of massive amounts of data and the integration of that data to deliver relevant decisions in a timely fashion has proven to be something for which we are ideally well suited. So a couple of areas where that's applicable have been with the Department of Defense customer. We've talked about it before, the Department of the Navy. That AI as a service model is becoming rather more widely deployed across numerous agencies. And that ties to a number of different things. How do you integrate that data with like geospatial visualization for NOAA's purposes? You know, how do you model the weather in real time and update that weather with most recent data? You have to have tremendous capacity and velocity of data in order to do that. So we've been, you know, very pleased to enable the rapid integration of multiple different data types across a couple of different agencies. Space Force has an interesting use case as well. I mean, think about cloud computing, they're above the clouds, but the ability to move data across, you know, large scale three-dimensional spaces has been fundamental for things like our Portworx platform for container-based storage in Kubernetes, and providing that platform agnostic maneuverability of data to the point of need and back to, you know, well, whichever point of need it is, from the edge to the core and back again. So those are probably two of our primary use cases, AI and cloud native computing capability, where we've been having, you know, substantial impact, especially early on, in helping agencies take advantage of these new and emerging technologies.
We really do appreciate that. And you talk about the edge, and Dr. Costa, you know, the edge for you can be quite a ways away there. You top-lined a lot of activity that you all are working on. I know you and the rest of the leadership are focused on a lot of areas. Can you give us an example of an area, that program that you'd like to highlight that's really going to ring the bell and be super impactful for all the things you all are doing there?
Absolutely. And as both Frank and Nick indicated, it's very hard to pick one. Sure. Because I could literally speak all day about needing to create the Internet of Space Things, right? And being able to put cloud computing, elastic compute out at the very edge, you know, at the point of data collection to process. But instead, what I'm going to talk about is I think our most impactful program to date in Space Force, and it's focused on our most important asset, which is our people. And Space Force is inherently a highly technical agency or service, and we need to ensure that our guardians, both military and civilian, are digitally fluent. So we have contracted out with numerous companies to provide over 30,000 digital classes via Digital University. And so some people might be familiar with Digital University. Air Force originally put that digital platform together. We simply expanded it in Space Force to include a number of programs, micro degrees, et cetera, to allow our guardians to pursue interests in data science, artificial intelligence and deep learning, natural language processing, cloud, security, et cetera. So that's been incredibly successful. And a lot of our folks end up working shifts, and it's a great opportunity to be able to continuously upskill your people. The second part of kind of upskilling our people is the Supercoder program. So some people might have heard of the digital immersive, and that is our Supercoder program. Now, these are individuals in Space Force who have already been trained on their operational mission. So they already have expertise in a particular either network, system, constellation. Then we send them to immersive coding school, and they learn to become full stack developers. And they return to their unit 6 months later with those hands-on skills to both work on that operational element they've been trained on, and then to be able to rapidly react to commanders' needs in the field. And much like the Army has, for example, their airborne patch, we have a very similar thing for supercoders. They get a Z prefix and in their coding, so you can identify the supercoders in your force from where they're at, and they get a supercoder patch that they wear. And so that is a recognition of the importance that we place on being able to have those hands-on, roll up your sleeve coding skills at the very edge of our force.
Which is fantastic. And I presume these are uniformed employees in Space Force?
They're both uniformed and civilian.
Oh, cool. That is awesome. Billions of dollars of technology, and what a large program, a large focus on a very important area. I think that's awesome. I love the patch idea as well. Ted, you talked about a lot of operational activities at FEMA. Tell us about a program you'd like to highlight that the CTO office is working on to unlock all of that.
Yeah, similar to a lot of what's been said already and covered, right? So this, really the idea is, how do we look at data itself, and how do we sense make? And then third, how do we communicate it, right? If you don't have communications with your state, local, tribal, territorial partners, you don't have incident command. And in a sudden onset disaster, you don't get time back. You just don't.
Yeah.
So it becomes a no fail, right? So in other words, what is the backup to the backup? How are sites more resilient? And what is the data itself? What are the intrinsic biases towards the data? And that's obviously a hint at some of the challenges with regards to AI and large language models. But we already use that already currently within the agency. We look at generative AI with regards to major, minor destroyed properties after a hurricane. We'll look at roof lines to determine that, and that actually gets into major decision making that goes into a presidential declaration. So they're similar to I think some of the comments already made. Machine learning has already been here for quite some time, well over a decade in the agency. So for us, it's enabling and empowering data and communications for better decision making, whether it's in a hyperscaler cloud environment or not, or on-prem. It doesn't matter. We are really agnostic about that. And I think Dr. Costa mentioned elasticity. That's exactly right. We have to provide the right data to the edge. And in many ways, how do we make a better decision? Because at the end of the day, all of this is so that a federal coordinating officer, an incident commander can actually make a life safety decision and beginning the recovery process and the onward mitigation and strengthening resilience kinds of activities that will strengthen communities and make the nation stronger to what is an increasing pace for these natural disasters and man-made as well. We call them adaptive threats, things that Frank has mentioned and our wonderful partners at NOAA. I think about T.S. Eliot's, phrase, where's the information we've lost in data? Where's the knowledge we've lost in information? And those of us in the business, we say, where's the wisdom we've lost in knowledge? So ultimately, how do we actually empower our workforce to actually make, wise decisions and bring the sum total of who they are and their life experiences to bear in order to make the right decision, one that is going to be providing the best outcomes for our nation, our citizens, and our disaster survivors.
Better decision, real-time decision, can't rewind the clock. That's no question about that. Greg at BMC, give us an example of a program you'd like to highlight in respect to incorporating this technology.
Yeah, let's talk about something that applies in the federal space in particular. I think all of the parties here and listening have assets out in the field that they rely on to be available, right? And so one of the things that we're doing with one of our federal partners is making sure that we can converge OT and IT data to be able to speed up all of the actions that have to be taken based on what that data is telling you. So, if it's an aircraft, there is 2 gigabytes of data that is being created in a single flight. How do you take all of that data, combine it with weather data and operator data and all of the equipment data, maintenance data, so that when that flight lands, all of the varying parts that have to be put into place for that flight, for that asset to be used again, can be automated. Are parts ordered and available at the place that the plane's going to land because of the sensor data that's throwing off something? Have the operators been alerted and notified of potential changes in the mission that's going to be required with that particular aircraft? And when you have not just that one asset, but then a whole fleet of those assets with all of that data, being able to use AI to monitor that entire fleet and understand what's happening, it means that you have the right people at the right place, the right parts at the right place, and that those assets, that equipment is available when it's needed. Because many of these missions aren't pre-scheduled and pre-planned, right? They're highly reactive. And so how do you make sure that all of those technology assets are available? Because you're combining that OT and IT data in a way that can be actionable and automated. It's something we call precise, or our BMC Helix Edge, but it's just a very real world example of how all of these technologies can come together with a result that ultimately means that the work gets done when we need it done.
Logistics on an epic scale. We're going to talk about logistics in just a minute, but we're going to take a short break. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We are talking with the CTOs, specifically talking about specific programs, quite frankly. I'm going to throw it over to you, Dave, to highlight a program regarding logistics. When we wrapped up earlier, we were talking about Epic logistics.
Oh, no, thanks. I appreciate that. And of course, limiting it to one is tough, but I'm going to pick one that nobody else has talked about yet. And that's really the use of digital twin. As most of you know, you can do a digital twin of a whole bunch of different things. You can do it from a simple part. You can do it to all the way to an organization and run different excursions. For us right now, what we found is the sweet spot is a business process. So think of it as a logistics business process. And so we're pretty excited about this. We're actually embarking on 3 different digital twin projects of digital processes. And, you know, business processes, you guys may remember back in the day doing sticky notes in a conference room, trying to figure out your business processes. Well, now you can use IT following that digital trace to do that process for you. And then you can start running excursions. Where are the weak points in your process today? What if I make a change to it? What's that going to do? We're super excited about it because we're trying to do a lot of business process reengineering in DLA as we're working our modernization efforts. And this will allow us to speed that up. And so we're excited about the opportunity that brings and looking forward to seeing who wins. What's the best one of our 3 choices that we're going after right now?
Fantastic. And just continue to iterate using that technology. I think that's great. We are going to talk about priorities. We are going to talk about your number 1 priority for this year. We're going to start with you, Dr. Costa. Number 1 priority for you at U.S. Space Force.
This is a tough choice because I have a number of priorities, but if I had to choose, it's creating innovation partnerships across industry, academia, and our international partners. So, focused on S&T, we are establishing 5 new space science and technology institutes. And these are partnerships between industry, academia, and our international partners. And to ensure that we are working as a team and that we are gaining access to the best and brightest that the globe has to offer.
Fantastic. And you're operating in space and you're operating on a global scale to make sure that space is enabled. We really appreciate everything you're doing. Ted Akata, Chief Technology Officer, number 1 priority at FEMA for this year.
This year, it's going to be things like observability and open standards, data sharing, ditto to all of the above. But got to say that the priority for me personally is really looking 20, 30 years out. I'm just going to throw one out, timing. Given the panelists here, I thought I just, with Dr. Costa and with Frank here from NOAA, space and everything above terra firma is going to be increasingly contested. And this touches on everything from quantum, from qubits to quantum routers, all the way to semiconductor fabrication, our national leadership around fabrication, sub 3 nanometer, and then building that capacity within our nation. How to protect that supply chain, all of that, right? Cyber, et cetera. But if so much of our infrastructure as a nation is dependent upon timing, and I think national leadership is really required on that. Again, for FEMA, if you don't have communication and the data to make decisions, you don't have an incident command system. You don't have incident support, and you don't have incident command, full stop. So I'll stop there.
Interesting comment about, everything above us is open to be contested. And that's a very good point. Frank, how about at NOAA, number 1 priority for the Chief Technology Office at NOAA this year?
Yeah, and thank you. And Ted and Lisa kind of, we're all kind of thinking around the same things. I think part of the things that Lisa was talking about and Ted were talking about are timing, educating, advancing the technology workspace. I think infrastructure and software, or specifically software engineering, is going to be the driver, right? So all this, we tend to look at IT assets as IT assets, but really they are part of a system. And I think that processing will spread out. And that takes a lot of not only services, but also engineering, right? So I think the focus on speeding the process for software, more modern, paradigms, and kind of looking at moving away from systems and into services improves the timing, like to Ted's point, and improves your overall availability and kind of response time. So I think a lot of that is where we're going to focus on, really speeding up that process and trying to speed response by spreading out, stretching the compute as far as we can.
Availability, resilience, very key, and we really do appreciate that. Well, we're at a point in the show where we're going to wrap it up and start talking about the future. And of course, the whole topic is the future, but we're going to fast forward 2 to 3 years, and we're going to talk about what it looks like then. Greg, we're going to start with you at BMC and talk about, what's the demand signal coming from BMC? What's in the Petri dish 2 to 3 years from now? What are we going to be discussing on this show? What are you all going to be focusing on?
Yeah, if I put it in very generic terms, first, emerging tech and innovation is only valuable to any of us if it can be operationalized, connected, and amplified. And so really what we're focused on is, over the course of the next several years, and even today, is how do you take systems of record and turn them into systems of action? And so, AI is the secret sauce. Ultimately, the only way that we can turn our systems of record into systems of action at scale and at the pace and velocity that we need today is with AI. And so what we'll be talking about now and into the near future is, how do you take action, in many cases, in most cases, automated actions on the vast volumes of data. And there's this magic sauce of subject matter expertise that we often like to forget. So you can't just leverage technology to do it. You still have to invest in the subject matter expertise combined in that picture.
Good catch there, and certainly Space Force is doubling down on that.
Yeah.
Nick Saki, Pure Storage, what's it going to look like in 2 to 3 years, Nick?
So, Luke, thanks for asking. And I want to dovetail on something Greg says. Technology exists to amplify human capability. That's why we build things, is to make us better, more powerful, more flexible, and adaptable to our changing environments and needs. So at Pure, we're going to continue to drive innovation and data service across 5 key dimensions of security, simplicity, scalability, sustainability, and speed. And we're at an inflection point where we're seeing the transition of media from spinning disk to memory-based storage, similar to how we see transitions in locomotive from internal combustion engines to, battery electric vehicles. So we're improving capacity, throughput, accessibility, and driving down the cost of data. And this year, we launched our 72 terabyte drives. In the next 2 to 3 years, we expect to deliver drive capacities of 300 terabytes per drive. And that'll effectively increase the capacity and scalability of data systems by about 5-fold from the current point today, which is going to be absolutely critical based off of the amount of data that we're able to collect and our need to act on that data in ever shorter timeframes. So if you think about that, and you're talking about literally petabytes per rack unit, but that data is available to thousands of applications simultaneously. So that's our focus. It's really data at the wholesale level, and how do we deliver that? And to do that, we've been building our own drives for nearly 5 years now, because there's just no way to do that if we pin ourselves to commercially available commodity technologies.
High storage, high availability. We really do appreciate everything that you're doing to enable this community. David, at DLA, 2 to 3 years from now, what are you going to be cooking up at the Research and Development Center?
No, I appreciate that. So, we see a future in DLA where we've really expanded that joint whole of government integration of the key Industry 4.0 technologies. And we're doing that in a couple of ways. Of course, this is hard to do, right? You can't just implement these kind of things on the scale that the Defense Logistics Agency has with worldwide operations, whole of government, the services, around the globe, around the clock. So one of the ways we've done that is we've recently stood up our applied research for testing emerging technologies environment. We call it RTET. And this is our own cloud-based environment where we can test some of the very hard to do IT laden projects in a government cloud. So we can use real data. We know it's safe. We can test it and we can export it into transition quickly. We think that that's critical. We think that's an enabler for getting to things like a full digital sustainment platform where we can provide bi-directional flow between the military, DLA, and industry partners to provide the right 3D data that's needed to really have a modern manufacturing environment. So super excited about that future, and we're doing a lot of things to get us there now.
We're really looking forward to that and appreciate everything that you're doing. Frank, how about over at NOAA? 2 to 3 years from now, we'll have uncrewed autonomous vehicles all over the globe, perhaps, right? What will the CTO's office be then focusing on?
So I think the focus will be really on addressing kind of the now rapid pace that we all work at, right? So things like AI, and we've mentioned it a bunch of times today, are really going to have the not possibilities, it's more probability of changing the way, not only the way we work, but the way we communicate with our constituents, right? So things like generative AI can be a really interesting way for people to interact with weather and climate data, be able to find it easier, understand it easier. It'll make hopefully the forecaster and scientist's job easier. So a lot of that work in how we engage with folks and how we integrate technology into that, I think will be the kind of drive, right? Making impacts from the climate change accessible to the average citizen or the layperson, making better alerts for weather, impending weather danger. And I think a lot of that, combined with the kind of physical science, social science, and now all the AI and machine learning science that goes around all the work that we do, I think really needs to incorporate. And I think that's where the focus and the real innovation is going to be in the next couple of years. How do we engage the public? How do we use technology to do that? And how can we better communicate our mission?
And continue to unlock that very important data for everyone to make those real-time decisions, including the incident commanders. Ted, what you had spoke about 2 to 3 years from now, with the environment ever so complex and continuing to get more complex, where will the focus be 2 to 3 years from now for the Chief Technology Officer's organization?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And when you think about it, hopefully with regards to this hype cycle for new technologies, hopefully the bubble will be burst on AI a little bit, right? Because I think there's just folks will learn, we'll have policies that help address things like a bias in data, unconscious bias. And if you just, watch Shalini Kantaya's documentary called Coded Bias, or Kathy O'Neill's book on weapons of math destruction, the conversation's already happening. So hopefully, we'll get past this and we'll actually get to the real work of how to actually do this. So one thing I think for the workforce, because there's so much noise, and I don't mean signal, I mean wisdom, going back to Elliot. The idea is you're now seeing the growth, and I think it's going to mature in the next couple of years, this whole field of personal knowledge management, right? So in other words, knowledge gardens and these kinds of things, because the limiting factor in all of this is the human, it's the person, right? And how do you actually center humans used, and especially the federal workforce? People join the federal government because they're patriots. They want to serve the nation. They are there to help others, full stop. It's not about them. You think about, we're about to celebrate Juneteenth and African-American Black soldiers, the Buffalo Brigade, right? I mean, in World War II, you think about still celebrating in Normandy, right? The heroes that, the Second Rangers that assaulted Pontotoc, right? We have been a nation of selfless service to the citizens. It doesn't matter where you come from, what you look like, how you think. All of these things are really part of our nation's fabric. And I think we bring our authentic selves to work. and strengthening that ability to journal, to think, to make connections, and to center ourselves in our personal sort of knowledge gardens, I think is going to be something that you're seeing in industry, the beginnings of that, to formalize that. You saw nascent technologies, I think 10, 15 years ago. And I think that's going to kind of burst on the scene because that's really the antipode, right? That's really the counterweight to things like misinformation and disinformation and PII spillage and personal information, et cetera, right? All of that, the counterweight is the human itself. It's wise choices and the kinds of resiliency that the federal workforce will increasingly be, I think, I'm an optimist, is going to be increasingly strengthened in the next 3 years.
The counterforce is the human itself. I love that. Thank you very much, Ted, for those words of wisdom. Dr. Costa, 2 to 3 years now, we fast forward, we have this global collaboration that you've prioritized. We've got tens of thousands of coders out there, super coders. What will you be focusing on? What will your organization be focusing on 2 to 3 years from now?
So, I love the answer that Ted just gave about a diverse and inclusive workforce, and absolutely one that enforces belonging is important, right? Because it increases well-being. And so absolutely. But I'll talk about a different kind of resiliency, and that's resiliency of our space architectures, right? We need to move from what has been a brittle space architecture to not only a resilient one, but an anti-fragile space architecture, so that we can integrate emerging capabilities at scale and just in time. And so that's what I hope that we will be talking about, 2 to 3 years from now. That includes things like software-defined everything. There was a discussion earlier about digital engineering, digital twins, digital factories. Absolutely, but they need to be augmented with immersive visualization, because there is a lot of information coming in. And the more information does not necessarily mean better decision making. And so we need to understand what information is critical to making a particular decision. And I believe that the real key is visualization of those different courses of action and those choices. So I believe that, and I use generative AI a lot in the speech to image area. And as we get more sophisticated in that arena, I believe that we will be able to, with words, describe a particular environment, a particular scenario, and then have that generated for an individual so they can operationally train and test in a realistic, threat-informed environment.
Well, we're certainly looking forward to that, and I see a green field in your future for sure. I want to thank all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us on this program, and for everything that you do to fight the good fight, keeping this country safe, et cetera. We really do appreciate that. I want to thank the sponsors for supporting us on this show. I'd like to thank the good people here at Federal News Network that make the program so successful and enjoyable. And most of all, I'd like to thank the listening audience out there that tune in every month. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum, part of the Federal News Network.